President Biden facing a major foreign policy crisis, trying to reassure the world he can stop Russia from invading Ukraine. The White House warning Russian forces could take Ukraine's capital in 72 hours and are building up on the border. Biden meeting with the new German chancellor and had this message for Putin.
If Russia makes a choice to further invade Ukraine, we are jointly ready and all of NATO is ready. I think he has to realize that it would be a gigantic mistake for him to move on Ukraine. The impact on Europe and the rest of the world would be devastating, and he would pay a heavy price.
All right, Harold, I'll start with you. You've got Biden trying to convince the world that Russia will pay a heavy price if they invade the Ukraine. Do you believe him?
I do. Not only that, I thought the press conference today was mature, was serious, and I thought was direct. We have been precise. My daughter laughs at when I say that word too. We have been precise in detailing what we would do if there was an invasion. We have sent troops to not invade or not stop an invasion because Ukraine is not part of NATO, so they're not a beneficiary of the kind of protection that's provided there. But we're not naive. I don't think this president nor the chancellor of Germany is naive enough to know that the real audience we're trying to dissuade here, as much as we're the Russians, are the Chinese. And obviously in Taiwan. The Taiwan issue is different than Ukraine, but certainly they're watching us. So I thought what came out of this that was most impactful for Democrats, Republicans alike in the Congress, because there's some Republicans, including a senator from Missouri named Howley, who does not believe we should be in the business of protecting Ukraine. This is a larger issue, and I think sometimes politics creeps in everything, and it's certainly creeping into this with both of the parties. But I thought what he did today was one of the more serious press conferences. For those who were critical, rightly so, of our exit from Afghanistan, they are putting the pieces together, Secretary Blinken, the National Security Advisor Sullivan, and obviously this president, to ensure that we don't have a misstep like we did before.
You know, it's very interesting, Jesse, that we're so concerned about Ukraine, but we're not concerned about our own southern border. Do you see a problem there?
I see a big problem, and the country sees a problem, and the country does not care what happens in Ukraine right now. But you know who I blame for this disaster?
Who?
Bill Clinton. When the Soviet Union crumbled, they left 5,000 nuclear weapons in Ukraine. That made Ukraine the third biggest nuclear power in the entire world. So what did Bill Clinton do? In 1994, he signs the Budapest Memorandum. It says, Ukraine, you're going to give all the nuclear weapons back to Russia, and in exchange, Russia's going to promise not to invade you. Now, Russia's already invaded them once with Crimea, and now they're threatening to invade them again, and they have no nuclear deterrence. Right. And they're not even in NATO. So that might have been one of the dumbest deals we ever cut. I just think Putin right now is testing the West. They're seeing how much of Ukraine they can snatch up and what Germany's going to do because they're their biggest energy client. So we'll just wait and see. But if he does go in, that's going to be a bloody insurgency that I don't think the Russians can afford.
Well, you know, what's interesting about this, Dana, is that we're the third biggest purchaser of oil from Russia. I mean, aren't we interested in Nord Stream 2 also?
This has been the most fascinating part of all of this, and I'm real education for people to look at what happens. Talk about naive. Germany thinking that you can fuel an entire economy such as theirs on wind. You know, they are wonderful innovators, and they got rid of their nuclear programs. They have figured out a way to become completely, well, 52% of their energy comes from Russia, and they didn't think that was going to be a problem. I thought today that when Olaf is there with the president, basically saying, oh, yes, we're going to have a lot of wind and we're going to be completely fossil fuel free by 2045. It's like, just like such pipe dreams. In the meantime, you have people who are actually really worried about what could happen. And I think that this is a real wake-up call for America as well, to think about our own energy independence. And the policies that we are putting in place. It takes a long time for these companies to invest in order to go after more energy. And if you had this, when you had the change in administration, that was one of the first things that they signaled, is that America wants to be like Germany when it comes to energy. And as for me, no thank you. I do not want that at all. The press conference today was a lot better than the one he had before when he said minor incursion is cool.
Yeah.
And so maybe that will help. I give them I will say they are obviously much more organized and forthcoming with information than they were on Afghanistan.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a low bar. And I know low bars.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? But in terms of Germany and in terms of their, not really being a part of NATO, or so it seems they're not a part of NATO, the truth is that Jen Psaki, when asked a question, started talking about the fact that, we want to be a leader in green energy. And, we really can't be worried about oil and fossil fuels right now. I mean, except that's how we're living.
That's how we live. And we were pretty damn close to being energy independent. And that became, and the whole point of being, let's say, less involved in the Middle East, that's how we got to that stage. Jesse brought up an interesting point. If we do nothing and Russia invades, no one's ever going to give up their nukes again. They might. I mean, like if you go to North Korea, you go, I'm not giving them up. Now I'm going to say something. I don't know much about what's going on. My mother-in-law is in Kiev right now, so I'm worried.
Oh,
but has anybody?
Did you send her to Kiev?
Yeah, terrible.
When you saw, just
yeah. Well, at least she's not watching, so she didn't hear that joke. But yes, I did. But has anyone asked Putin publicly, or just what he wants? And I missed it. Like, what does he want?
He wants Ukraine not to be admitted to NATO.
Fine, then. Done. We're good. Like, what do I care? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
How about Crimea?
But then you always ask for something more.
But he wanted Crimea, and no one said anything.
When does it stop then? Because that's the challenge. And does China look at this? I mean, it was George H.W. Bush, and you're going to blame Bill Clinton. It was H.W. Bush also that agreed for
Bill signed it.
But what's history? But my own point is, what would he take next? I mean, he wants to reconstitute his greatest desire, Putin, is to reconstitute the USSR. So do we want the beginning blocks of it? I don't, and I just think it's not partisan in my mind.
Is it something like us deciding that? Trying to think of like us putting troops right on Cuba. I mean, it's like
Cuba was never part of our country. Ukraine was a part of theirs. Yeah. So anyway, it's a big.
Then I'm more sympathetic to Russia. Then I guess.
So you're saying we should invade Canada?
Yes,
Is that what you're saying?
Canada.
That's what
Canada.
I want.
Then Cuba.
All right.